All right, so it's time for us to get into the next corporate presentation on paradoxical leadership. May I please have on stage the speaker, Dr. Shubhakar Gajula, Director, Harrison Assessments, with huge round of applause. Let's keep the applause going. Can we have on stage Dr. Shubhakar Gajula?
Hi, good morning all. Good morning. So we're going to spend some time talk on this paradoxical leadership. Anyone heard the term paradox? Yes, no? Can I see the hands up? Yes, no? No? Yes? Okay. I'm a student of psychology with a PhD into psychometrics. And when I was studying psychology, a lot of my professors used to talk about different leadership styles and different management styles. And then I'm sure everybody in this room heard these terms like autocratic, democratic, and something else. And I was like so excited, wow, so different kinds of people. And then at that time in my mind, I always used to feel, because my grandmother always used to predict my behavior. Then I thought, you don't need to really be a psychologist to predict behaviors. Even at home, we have a lot of psychologists, right? So our spouses predict behavior so easily. And then when I joined organizations, and then when I started looking, I spent quite some time with Wipro. And then I was training them. I was training a different set of peoples. And then I was seeing, yeah, but this guy is, I studied here autocratic, and this guy looks like autocratic. This guy is a democratic, and this guy, looks like this. But each one came with certain problem. If somebody is too autocratic, नहीं उसे बात नहीं करना है. Anyone felt that? And if somebody is too democratic, हाँ चलेगा इसके साथ. चलेगा, boss cool है. एक बार बोलेंगे lunch पे जाएंगे, so टफ सब ठीक हो जाएगा. We all had those assumptions, right? Do you agree? Yes? And then when I started working into this, and then I started seeing, autocratic comes with a problem. There are some issues. Democratic do come with certain issues. And then what's this? And then when I joined Harrison, I've been with Harrison for the last 12 plus years now. And then helping organizations do a lot of these things on the leadership, behavioral competencies, and then colleague Sangeeta was talking about the later aspect of the attitude kind of a thing where you have an in-person. So we have a science behind that of how we can even measure that. And then what I've seen, and then when I was going through this in the initial phases of my work, something recalled in my head was one of the quote of John Maxwell, which says, taking sides is never needed. It's always having that balance. It's always having that balance. When somebody is too strong on one thing and not on another thing, there's something missing. And when these out of balances play, there may be a lot of issues that might come up, and then we've been seeing that happening, and that's my work that I've been doing with this Harrison Assessments for the past 10, 12 years. Wherein again, a lot of things that are happening, again, this is something that inspires me. Being stubborn and being open-minded. That's the way things work. And very paradoxical. And what Harrison talks about, it's a psychometric tool. It's a science of how we measure the behaviors, where we say a single strong trait can be a derailer itself. A single strong trait, something that you feel very strong in an individual, can be derailing if it is not complemented by another paradoxical trait. And whereas a lot of other tools talk about a bipolar kind of a thing, you're either this or either that, what we try to give an insight to the organizations and a lot of leaders is something very strong in you can derail you if you're not balancing with another aspect of it. And one example of that, we usually talk about this on the communication, very simple kind of a thing. When initially I was talking about my grandmother was used to predict behaviors, and even at our homes, a lot of our own family members predict our behaviors. They know next minute what we will do. You don't need to have a psychology degree to try to understand somebody's behavior. It only gives you a science of how you can analyze a lot of things. Now, there's something on the communication. By the time we talk about a couple of minutes with an individual, we know whether this guy is direct or whether this person is very tactful. Yes? You have a 5 minutes conversation with somebody, we know, ye banda direct hai, ise ye muh pe baat karta hai. He is very direct. Or somebody is very nice, tactful, try to put information, conversation in a very nice way. Both we like. But imagine an individual who is extremely direct with you. How do you feel? Sorry? You feel blunt? I'm talking about frank. She's saying blunt. I didn't use the word blunt. I'm talking frank, which is very nice to me. I want people to tell me directly what they are thinking about me or what the conversation is all about. But because I'm overusing my directness, मेरे mind पे ना directness निकल गया, blunt आ गया. While frank may be a very nice, positive trait, because I'm overusing it, it is getting replaced by a derailer, which is blunt. How many of you would be excited to have a conversation with a blunt person? No, we'll be excited to fight. Yes? हाँ, आप blunt हो तो मैं double blunt हूँ. मुझे भी बात करना आता है blunt. Now imagine the contra of that. Imagine you have somebody who is extremely tactful. How does it come across? Shrewd? Okay. Any other thing? I'm not using these words. I'm using tactful. Somebody is overusing tactfulness, overusing diplomacy. Cannot connect. Okay. Anything else? Fake? Man, that's too extreme. Sorry? Who's that? Cautious, okay? So I'm talking about tactfulness, you're giving me shrewd, you're giving me fake, you're giving me cautious. Something I missed, one more word I missed. Cannot connect. और माइंड पे आ जाएगा बस घुमा फिरा के क्या बात कर रहे हो, सीधा सीधा बोलो ना, क्या चाहिए? How many experience that? All here? Most of you here? Wonderful. Now, it's the same thing on the communication. Seems so simple. घर पे भी बहुत झगड़े होते हैं ना, if you're married. Such a simple concept gets too complicated because somebody is overusing something with a out of balance another thing. In Harrison terminology, we call this as a respectful candor, which is a combination of two traits, one frank and another diplomacy. Wherein a lot of traditional tools, I come from a psychology background, I might have used more than 150 tools. And for my PhD, I've designed a tool which is there on Ministry of HRD website as a reference point in psychometrics, because when I did my PhD in psychometrics, I found very little literature in psychometrics. I'm talking way back in 2003, when I did my PhD in psychometrics. There was no literature in India because I designed something very indigenous PhD psychometric tool. Now my PhD entire thesis is available on the Ministry of HRD website so that the students now can use that as a reference point. Now, why I'm saying this is what I studied always was, it's a bipolar. Either you're this or this. But what Harrison gives an insight is about your behavior is never in isolation. It's always a combination of different things. It's a combination of different factors. Like what we are talking about, a frank and diplomacy. I'm frank and I'm direct, I'm tactful, I'm diplomacy. If I have a balance between both of these things, the individual has three choices of behaviors. I can be direct when required. I can be tactful when required. I can use both at the same time and be forthright diplomatic. And in the contra to this, if somebody is overusing frankness with an out of balance on diplomacy, my frankness is seen as blunt, which is a derailer. And if I'm overusing my diplomacy without having a frankness, my diplomacy is seen as being evasive or shrewd or cannot connect or to an extreme fake. Boss, I'm here to put my thing across and you're telling me fake? I feel very upset about that. But and that's happening because I'm overusing something with an out of balance another thing. Now when we get an insight about these things, wherein it's not about where I am, but it's about how balanced I am. It's not about contradictory, but it's about how synergistic that this can give me a deeper impact. We do this very scientifically, wherein we try to plot two traits, one on the vertical axis, one on the horizontal axis, one very action-oriented like Frank, very action-oriented. On one axis, we call it as a dynamic, and another supportive trait we call as a gentle trait, and then see how and where the person can be. I can have my preference to be frank. I can have my preference to be diplomacy. It's about how much. Do I prefer one more over the other? Then what's happening? And if I'm preferring both of them, both are strong, I'm balanced into something. Or if I'm not preferring both of them, then I have a balanced deficiency. I'm high on one trait, maybe there is a lot of aggressive imbalance. I'm low on something else, maybe there is a passive imbalance. And using this grid kind of a thing, a lot of insights come up from a leadership perspective, which we see it helps. I mean, this is one of the paradoxes. I mean, I'm into research. I head the global research. And then this is one of the paradoxes that a lot of leaders try to get into a different zone of behaviors. Let me just say this. You might have seen two different types of people. One who may be very assertive. Boss, mujhe jo chahiye, chahiye bas. How you think about it, I don't care. ये मुझे चाहिए, शाम तक ये चाहिए. आप सोओगे, नहीं सोओगे, घर जाओगे, नहीं जाओगे, I don't mind. I need this today. And there's another set of leaders who are very helpful. Oh, very helpful, very helpful, very helpful, very helpful. To a point that helpfulness gets replaced by self-sacrificing. अच्छा, आपको तकलीफ है तो ठीक है, आज मत करो, कल कर दो. ठीक है, चलेगा, चलेगा, चलेगा. And let me also help you. They see you for 2 days, they see you for 3 days struggling, and then काम नहीं हो रहा है. बॉस के माइंड पे भी टेंशन है, and then this guy says, ठीक है, let me also help you. You have experienced that in the early days of your career? Yes, somebody really helped you, and then you moved on, and then you really, that person is there as a mentor or very strong in your head. But I'm sure even the same person, how that person behaved under stress, the same very so-called a nice goody-goody kind of a person, stress पे flipped and becoming dominant. बॉस बहुत दे दिया आपको टाइम, अभी शाम को मुझे देना है, खत्म कर दो शाम में. अभी एक हफ्ता से आप ये चिल्ला रहे हो, शाम तक मुझे हो जाना है. Then in your head you might be thinking, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, he's such a nice person, and today all of a sudden he's just jumping around and saying, चाहिए तो चाहिए. Experienced? What's happened to this guy? And Harrison gives that insight and says how these so-called flips do happen when there is. Here, another example. When you see that hurricane kind of a symbol on the top, under stress, here you see this person very warm, very empathetic, 9.9 out of 10 on being warm, empathetic. But I don't want to enforce the rules. Because for me, I've grown up in such culture, boss, किसी को कुछ बोलना है तो गलत है. I come from a very nice family background where I don't push people to follow the rules. क्यों? Why? In the last 20 years, I heard this response at least more than 700 times. Different geographies. This answer that I get is, when I do the coaching sessions, intervention sessions, boss, we are dealing with adults, not kids. They know what they want, what they have to do. They have studied, they know what they have to do. So I don't really need to push people to follow the rules because we are dealing with adults. And this response repeatedly I've heard. And the same person under stress, when there are deadlines which are missed out, when there are things that are not happening, the so-called very warm, empathetic person all of a sudden flips and becomes harsh. Maybe it's situational, maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for one day. But because of that, you might have experienced or you might have seen there's a lot of team disruptions also happen. The team cohesion which was there gets disrupted because this guy is shouting. And in heads, people start feeling and make those labels and tags. हाँ ये ऐसे ही चिल्लाएगा stress पे. Now why? And the way we try to help the individual. Imagine you're somebody who is very warm, empathetic person. Somebody comes to you and say, don't be so nice. What would be your first response? Why? What else? You're very warm. Naturally, you know, that's your lifestyle. That's your life theme. That's your life theme. People know you as a warm, empathetic person, and then somebody coming to you and says, no, don't be so nice to people. What's the first thing that gets on your head? Why? Then, is it possible, when something is so nice to you, when you're close to something, that's your natural behavior. I'm so warm, empathetic, and somebody is telling you not to be that. Can that happen? Not to be empathetic. Yes, it happens with stress. You'll be so cautious about that. नहीं, अभी मुझे ऐसा ही बात करना है, आर्मी की तरह बात करना है. So consciously you will do that. And your people know that you are not this guy. 2 minutes वो strict army regimental talk बात करोगे, उनको पता चलेगा कि नहीं, this is not your style. Even at home, when I talk to my son about very strict thing, say, no, this is not the way you talk. What happened to you? You're asking somebody to just move out of the natural behavior which you are with for the last 30, 40 years? No, sorry, no, cannot happen. The way that we try to help organizations and the leaders is try to give them that insight on what are those unintended consequences of being high on something, and what are the possible benefits that you can get but by improving on something which you prefer low. And then when try to help this, imagine, maybe I'm just talking numbers here, if somebody is 3.1, you try to help the person maybe in the next 6 months, 9 months to move at least to 5. That is very, very high number I'm talking about. At least to 5 from a permissive zone. If you look at the coordinates moving up and down, 9.9 on one axis and 5 on another axis, the person slightly starts moving into a compassionate enforcing zone where the person sees the possible benefits and the possible unintended consequences. And I'm going to close this in a couple of minutes, and this is how the report looks like. You complete a 20-25 minutes of assessment, you get a report which gives an insight from interpersonal perspective, achievement perspective, leadership and strategic perspective, get an insight on what are your strong traits, what are your genuine strengths, and what can be your derailers. And if you need to work on something, how you can help yourself as a leader, how you can help yourself as an individual to see a ripple effect in the behaviors. Like, for example, I'll give you certain traits. Just imagine this individual. If somebody is extremely frank, plus extremely confident, too much certainty, too much frank, too much enforcing, too much assertive. When I say too much, I'm talking about a score maybe of a 9, 9.5, 9 and above. How do you visualize this person? Sorry? Arrogant. Okay. Aggressive. objective. Sorry? Task-oriented. Naturally, do we feel comfortable with interacting with such person, such leader? Maybe with hesitation. Or imagine something contra to that, opposite to that. If somebody is extremely diplomatic, extremely open, reflective, extremely warm, empathetic, this person may come across as a very nice leader, but the task may be missing, because the person is not willing to enforce the rules. So we try to give these insights to the individuals and the leaders in the organizations, and helping them how to find out the differences between those strong traits and the genuine strengths, and how the strong trait can be a derailer, and how under stress the person can flip into something else. Now, if you want to experience yourself of what this paradox is all about, we are open to give you a complimentary report into that. We are there outside, talk on the networking, and then take this ahead. Thank you so much.
We can do better at the applause department. Let's applaud for Dr. Shubhakar Gajula, Director, Harrison Assessment. And now, can I have on stage Mr. Joy Banerjee, CHRO, IL&FS Group, to felicitate the speaker, Dr. Shubhakar. And let's keep the applause going. Dr. Shubhakar and Mr. Joy.